Imagine this. You're sitting quietly, maybe reading, maybe just breathing in a rare moment of peace. Suddenly, ping, your phone lights up. Your heart skips. For a split second, you're hooked. You don't even think, your hand just reaches for it. It's almost automatic, like scratching an itch you didn't know you had. But have you ever stopped to wonder why? Why are these tiny alerts so powerful that they can control our attention, our behavior, even our emotions? The truth is, the story behind your phone notifications is darker, stranger, and far more fascinating than you've ever been told. This is not just a tale about technology. It's about psychology. It's about history. It is about how a simple sound or vibration has been weaponized into one of the most effective attention traps in human history. And by the end of this journey, you might never hear that innocent ding the same way again. Let's rewind. Because to understand the shocking truth behind your phone notifications, we first need to go back to a time long before smartphones even existed. In fact, before electricity. Imagine the 19th century, when the telegraph was the cutting-edge technology of the day. Messages zipped across wires faster than horses could gallop or ships could sail. And what signaled the arrival of those messages? A sound, a sharp click, a tapping code, a bell ringing. That was the birth of remote alerts, the earliest ancestor of the modern notification. For the first time in history, human beings weren't just living their lives. They were being interrupted by information that demanded attention right now. Fast forward a few decades. By the late 1800s, telephone operators used bells to signal incoming calls. The ring wasn't just a sounded, was a command. Pick up. Respond. Don't ignore this. The humble bell became a Pavlovian trigger. And yes, I use that word deliberately, because even then, science was starting to uncover how our brains could be trained like Pavlov's dogs do, respond automatically to sound cues. A ring wasn't just a ring, it was the spark of a conditioned reflex. But the story doesn't end there. Jump into the 20th century, and we find ourselves in the era of pagers. Hospitals, businesses, even drug dealers relied on these little buzzing devices. A vibration on your hip meant urgency, responsibility, or opportunity. By the 1980s, the sound of a pager was more than just technology, it was a social status. You were important enough to be summoned at any moment. Society was already being rewired. Interruptions weren't rude, they were proof you mattered. And then came the cell phone. If you're old enough, you probably remember the Nokia ringtone. Da 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 da, da da da, da da da. Harmless, right? But here's the shocking truth. Those ringtones weren't random. They were designed to be catchy, memorable, impossible to ignore. Just like a baby's cry or a fire alarm, these tones tapped into the primal parts of our brain that scream. Pay attention now. And by the time smartphones exploded into our lives, the groundwork was already laid. We were primed to respond instantly to every buzz, every ping, every little red dot. But here's where it gets sinister. Because modern notifications aren't just about telling you something. They're about keeping you hooked. Let's dive into the psychology. Back in the 1950s, a researcher named B.F. Skinner ran experiments with pigeons. He discovered something called variable rewards. If pigeons pecked a button and always got food, they eventually got bored. But if sometimes they got food and sometimes they didn't, they became obsessed specking endlessly, hoping for the next reward. Sound familiar? That's the exact principle your notifications are built on. Sometimes it's a meaningless email. Sometimes it's a life-changing text. Sometimes it's just spam. But the uncertainty keeps you hooked. Every ding is like pulling a slot machine lever. Maybe this time, maybe the next. And here's the wild part. Neurological studies prove this. Brain scans show that dopamine to brains reward chemical spikes when we anticipate a notification, not just when we receive one. The mere sound or vibration tricks your brain into craving. You're not addicted to the content, you're addicted to the anticipation. That's why even if you don't check, you can't stop thinking about it. But let's not stop at science. Let's get personal. Think about the last time you left your phone in another room. Did you feel a weird phantom buzz in your pocket? Like you swore your phone vibrated, but it didn't. That's not your imagination. That's your brain, literally rewiring your sensory experience. Psychologists call it phantom vibration syndrome. In other words, we've been trained so deeply that our minds now generate false alarms on their own. Notifications have invaded not just our attention, but our perception of reality itself. Now here's where history and psychology collide in a chilling way. Back in the 1930s, a Russian psychologist named Bluma Zagarnik discovered something odd. People remember unfinished tasks better than finished ones. This became known as the Zygarnik effect. Want to guess what your notifications are? They're deliberately unfinished tasks. An unread badge. A half-previewed message. A little red dot. They exploit your brain's obsession with completion. You feel compelled to click not because you care about the content, but because your brain can't stand the open loop. And make no mistake, this isn't accidental. Tech companies hire behavioral psychologists. They literally design these systems to exploit your mental wiring. Every color, every buzz, every vibration is tested, refined, perfected to maximize one thing. Your attention, because your attention is money. Every second you spend checking, scrolling, tapping is another ad impression, another data point, another dollar in their pockets. But here's the twist. Notifications aren't just about business, they're about power. Because when you control what interrupts people, you control their reality. Think about it. Notifications decide when you look away from your child, when you stop your conversation, when you lose your train of thought. They insert themselves into the fabric of your life, dictating what deserves your attention. That's not just annoying, it's control at the most intimate level, and history has shown us what happens when people discover this power. Back in the 1940s, propaganda researchers learned that repetition and interruption could shape beliefs. If you repeat something often enough and interrupt people at emotional moments, you can steer their thoughts without them realizing it. Now, pair that with modern notifications. Imagine not just being nudged to buy products, but being nudged to think certain things, feel certain emotions, even vote in certain ways. Suddenly, that innocent ding feels a lot more dangerous, doesn't it? And if you think this is all abstract, think again. Consider the story of Tristan Harris, a former Google design ethicist, who revealed how notification systems are built like time bombs for attention. He admitted that engineers debated the exact shade of red for notification. Vajay is because red creates urgency, anxiety, even fear. That is why your Facebook icon isn't blue or green when there's a message. It's red. It's screaming at you. But the most shocking truth, notifications are not just external, they've become internal. Because once your brain is wired, you don't even need the phone anymore. You wake up at 3 a.m. thinking you heard a buzz. You feel restless if you haven't checked in an hour. You can't focus without the constant drip of digital stimulation. That's not convenience, that's dependency. And yet, here's the paradox. We hate notifications. Surveys show most people describe them as stressful, distracting, even overwhelming. And still we can't turn them off. Why? Because, deep down, we fear missing out. FOMO isn't just slang, it's biology. Our ancestors survived by paying attention to urgent signals. A rustle in the bushes, a cry from the tribe. Ignoring alerts could mean death. Today, that survival instinct has been hijacked by an algorithm. What used to save us now enslaves us. But don't worry, this isn't all doom and gloom, because history also shows us that humans adapt. Just as we adapted to the printing press, the telegraph, the telephone, and even television, we're starting to push back. More people are silencing their phones, using focus modes, demanding ethical design. There's a growing movement to reclaim our attention from the claws of constant interruption. So, where does this leave us? The shocking truth about your phone notifications is that they're not just little sounds. They're carefully engineered psychological levers, rooted in centuries of history, powered by cutting-edge science, and fueled by billion-dollar industries. They shape not just what you see, but how you think, how you feel, even how you live. The next time you hear that familiar ding, ask yourself, is this really my choice? Or is it someone else, pulling the strings of my brain? Because maybe the scariest part isn't how notifications control us. It's how easily we've learned to love the control.